Good day, I'm Dr. T and welcome to my office. So today I'd like to talk about the origins of chemistry. So chemistry is the study of chemicals, anything made up of atoms, and of course the related topics that involve those aforementioned atoms, which, you know, kind of is like everything. Now, of course, we didn't start out this way because, of course, we didn't know that atoms were a thing. So, like all of the sciences, chemistry had to develop from its pre-scientific counterparts. Now, as far as chemistry goes, typically we like to look at three major origins for chemistry. Although different sources will vary on which ones are kind of the major influences, as well as other sources that had large impacts in chemistry becoming what we now know as chemistry. The first and kind of classic one is alchemy. So from time immemorial, folks have been mixing things together to see what they get. And from this developed a field that gets referred to as alchemy. We start seeing this predominantly in the Middle Ages. We see a lot of this in the Arab caliphates around the 8th, 9th century, where actually a lot of the techniques that we now use had been established. Things like distillation, etc. The core of alchemy is not really what pop culture describes it. It definitely had a lot of mysticism blended into it, which definitely gave it a bad rap, one that it wasn't until really the late 19th century that chemistry was able to shake. Although some of that mysticism really was more of encryption in some cases. The idea here is that with the absence of intellectual property law, if you wanted to utilize something, you're going to probably have to keep it secret, and thus you encoded it into these mystic tomes that in reality were just encryption. And of course, to anyone else, they wouldn't realize this was encrypted. They would instead think it's some kind of mystical, magical content. Although there definitely was some of this mystical, magical stuff going on. Because, superstition, especially when you're dealing with stuff that you don't really understand what's going on. That said, the real core of alchemy was not trying to change one thing into another, although that was definitely part of it. It was purification. Alchemy was in many respects the direct ancestor of what we would now call separation science, the field of chemistry where you're trying to take multiple things and separate them apart. A few classic cases that would have been known to the medieval alchemists would have been things such as distillation of alcohol, or at the time what was referred to as aqua vita, the water of life, because, people have always liked their alcohol. And thus you could take, through a series of steps, specifically distillation, take a moderately alcohol-containing liquid, such as wine or beer, and make something that had a much higher concentration of alcohol. It had the essence of the intoxication of the alcoholic beverage, what we would later discover was ethanol. And of course, you could do this with other things. Perfumers would be taking various plants and extracting their essential oils, which are plant-derived small molecules that give them their scent and their flavor, etc. And you could, extract the essential oils from, say, lavender, and you could have a small vial of liquid that smelled like an entire bouquet of lavender just with a few drops. And so the idea was that, hey, you could purify crude things into pure stuff. So we could purify lead into gold. Well, lead is not crude gold. But the idea is understandable when you don't understand what you're actually working with. So they were trying to extend what they knew, and they just tried to extend it a little too far. Of course, different cultures had different takes on what we would consider alchemy, with blending into the next field that became fairly important as an origin of chemistry, and that was apothecary. So in apothecary, you are looking for medicinal herbs and other substances, basically the origin of pharmacology. And with that, you're trying to find plants that have components that will make people better. Now, of course, with add in some alchemy here, you're going to try and purify that and get the extract out. The last field is one that is actually very much still its own field, but has heavily influenced chemistry by its development, and that is of metallurgy. Understanding what you can do to metals, whether it be the processes that you make them undergo, or the blends of different metals you put together, and how those processes and those blends change the physical properties of those metals. Of course, with human society, we can track the growth of our technological development quite often by the material we use to build things. So, you know, you look in the past, you have the Stone Age. We built with stones. Then you have the Bronze Age, of course, kind of skipping copper because copper wasn't that much better than stone to start with. But now you've got the Bronze Age. We've developed the metallurgy to make bronze. Later on, the Iron Age, the ability to make iron. And thus, by understanding metallurgy, we're really, you know, the core technologies of civilization. And from metallurgy's understanding of the way metals work, we have derived a lot of our understanding of the way chemistry works. A bit of an unsung hero in the development of chemistry, a little bit later on, really as chemistry is already becoming a thing, but making chemistry much more replicable and widespread, is the dye industry, the making of colorants. This really starts kicking off, from a chemistry's point of view, towards the end of the 19th century, where the beginning of synthetic dyes start to become a thing. And thus, by being able to make a very valuable substance, chemistry is able to go from this fringe, weird, alchemic science that was really looked down upon as, you know, more mystic and magic, and then actually, you know, gain a reputation of being a replicable, profitable science. So with that said, I'll jump into more chemistry and its development in later videos, but have a wonderful day.